A Georgia State student opens up about their experience navigating through campus.
And the NCAA officially begins the formal process of allowing compensation for student athletes. All that and more on Panther Report News. Hello, and welcome to Panther Report News. I'm Keelan Berrien.
And I'm Maya Grant. Construction is a delay for some. A Georgia State student with spastic diplegic cerebral palsy paves the way for herself despite the minimal accommodations she says are available. PRN's Kevin Sanchez has more on the story.
If I have a class at 11, I try to be up by like 8:30 just so I can have that gap to find a way to get to class. Like I'll have at least 2 ways to get to every class just in case one way doesn't work. I have spastic diplegic cerebral palsy, which is basically lack of oxygen to the brain before or shortly after birth, which caused my muscles to not develop all the way. You know how we have like emergency alerts when there's like a robbery or, you know, an accident of some sort? I think we should have that specifically for students who are registered with the Office of Disability, because sometimes buses aren't running, elevators don't work, and I won't know this until I get there. The elevator, it's by the library, and it goes down for you to get to Langdale. They had it shut down the other day, and so I'm sitting there and I'm pressing the button, and it's not coming. I'm like, okay, it's been 10 minutes. So obviously the elevator's not working. It just depends on the day, the weather. Sometimes rain is so bad I can't go to class because I'll slip and fall. Sometimes ramps are closed off. Like Langdale is really bad right now. There's a ramp on the first floor that's completely blocked off by construction. So it just depends. If we had something to let us know, I feel like it would be better. Georgia State Disability Services tends to go off of your IEP in high school. They are very helpful when it comes to like succeeding in classes, but sometimes it's hard for me to even get to class. I think that it's very important to remember that disability is fluid. It affects a lot of people in a lot of different ways. Not everybody has the same disability. I know a lot of people who wanted to go to Georgia State and they're like, well, they're not ADA accessible all the way, or they don't keep up with code, so I can't go there. But if this is a school you want to go to, you should be able to come regardless of the type of school it is. So, yeah.
PRN has reached out to Georgia State's Access and Accommodation Center for a sit-down interview, but was unable to schedule one after attempts. But in an emailed statement to PRN, they say, quote, due to the unique size and sprawling location of Georgia State University, we may not always realize there is a barrier until someone brings it to our attention. Then we begin planning for mitigation of that barrier.
We are following a developing story that took place at 112 Cortland Apartment early Sunday.
According to preliminary information from the Atlanta Police Department, a man was pronounced dead after a verbal altercation escalated with the building security. The male victim later became unconscious and the guard attempted to perform CPR. He was taken to Grady Hospital where he was pronounced dead. The case has now been ruled as a homicide.
The Atlanta child murders terrorized Atlanta's youth 40 years ago. Since then, a number of documentaries have set a spotlight to the case. We turn to Alexandra White for how one Georgia State professor is taking a closer look.
What hasn't changed in America is the power structure's attitude about racial issues.
Early this year, the case that struck fear into the hearts of many Atlanta residents between 1979 and 1981, known as the Atlanta child murders, was reopened.
It would certainly be in order for us to now look once again at these cases and to determine once and for all if there is additional evidence that may be tested.
In 1982, the case involving 22 child murders was closed shortly after Wayne Williams was convicted of killing 2 adults and considered a suspect in the child murders. Since then, more have started asking questions. Vince Velasquez, a former Atlanta Police Department detective that now explores past criminal cases in the series ATL Homicide, says he is skeptical.
So what I did learn reading the FBI fiber analysis report is that there was a significant amount of evidence, physical and circumstantial evidence that links Wayne Williams to many of these victims, from carpet fibers that were extremely rare, and those fibers were found on several of the victims.
But Mark Morey, who was the first journalist granted an interview with Wayne Williams, says the fibers were not a reliable source of evidence.
The fibers were not really a good piece of evidence. I had the FBI admit they bungled the fiber evidence. And it also turns out that the fibers were much more common.
Both investigating the case agree.
And the whole sort of political atmosphere that framed this case, that was not presented in the mainstream media.
A lot of people don't think that Wayne Williams killed all these children. We're coming out of the late 70s, early 80s. We're still fresh in the civil rights era where, there's a lot of distrust from the black community, in the white community, the government, and the police department.
Having been featured on the Netflix original series Mindhunters, the case has piqued the interest of a whole new generation. Morey is now interested in working with the student mentorship program GSU-TV to produce a follow-up to his documentary. Alexandria White, PRN.
So Keelan, is it true that college athletes could be getting paid for playing sports?
That's what I've been hearing, Maya. Well, let's turn to Dominic Sarasi for information on the story and the rest of the updates on sports.
How's it going, everyone? I'm Dominic Shirosky, and welcome to Primetime. We have a lot to get into today, but first up, we have to talk about the big news. This past Tuesday, the NCAA agreed to amend the rules that prevent collegiate athletes from being paid for their images, names, or likeness. The association unanimously passed the proposition earlier this week after decades-long opposition to the idea. This change in character comes just a month after California passed their State Bill 206, which would allow for the payment of athletes with or without the NCAA's approval. This reversal also comes just weeks after NCAA President Mark Emmert called the payment of athletes a, quote, existential threat. While many celebrate this as a win, there are some who argue that this will create a pay-for-play system, with the biggest colleges providing the most money to the best players, not unsimilar to professional sports teams. This vote, however, is just the first step in what will most likely be a much larger discussion in the near future. The final decision will most likely come this April when the NCAA Board of Governors finalizes their rule changes for the future. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk some sports. Earlier this week, the Georgia State's women's basketball team opened preseason play against the Tuskegee Golden Tigers. The Lady Panthers fell 78-73 in the exhibition. Reporter Cherry Pruitt has more.
The Georgia State's women's basketball team held an exhibition game with the Tuskegee Golden Tigers. The exhibition game was a test of fierce competition between the two teams. The Panthers fought hard, but lost 73-78. Coach Gene Hill didn't seem swayed by the loss. He plans to review from the game and work from there.
You want to make sure that you control the controllables, and that's what we're looking for. That we miss box out assignments, that we miss assignments on offense or defense that created opportunities there. You can live with missed shots at time as long as they're great shots, but you have to make sure that you control the controllables. So those are the things that we're trying to get our kids to understand.
Tensions for winning were high, but seniors relayed good tips for working hard under defeat. Senior Madison Irvin explains the advice she gives to the newer players.
My main advice to them is just to not be so nervous and so tense, because we do need them. So it's not like they can take days off, and just making sure they stay locked in just as much as everybody else, and that we hold them to the same expectations as we hold ourselves. The 2019-20 season will officially start at home with Toledo Tuesday, November 6th. Cherie Pruitt, PRN.
The Georgia State volleyball team's losing season continues as they drop back-to-back matches against Troy and South Alabama. These losses make 3 consecutive matches in which the Panthers have lost in straight sets against a Sun Belt opponent. While Georgia State's defensive efforts are to be commended, with both Sydney Stroud and Jameshia Griffin combining for 7 blocks against South Alabama, their offense still lacks potency. The Panthers managed only a .035 hitting percentage in their match against Troy. Junior Leah Wilcox, however, continues her success leading the team in kills during their 2-match weekend. The Panthers will be on the road as they face Little Rock and Arkansas State today and tomorrow. Now, there's winning and winning at the right time. For the Georgia State women's soccer team, they're winning at the perfect time. After going on a 1-6-2 skid and being tied for 6th in the conference, the Panthers have finished the season on a 4-game win streak, which has them tied for 4th in the conference heading into the Sun Belt Conference playoffs. The Panthers will face Coastal Carolina in the first round. Oh, speaking of win streaks, the Georgia State football team is on a roll of their own. The Panthers are currently riding a 4-game win streak and are now bowl eligible for the 3rd time in school history. The 19-point win against Troy was due in large part to continually record-breaking running back Trey Barnett. Barnett broke the single-game school rushing record with his 242-yard performance, which also put the senior running back well over the all-time school rushing record with 1,631 career yards. Reporter Nigel Butler spoke with Barnett about his accomplishments this season.
Georgia State beat Troy this past weekend 52-33, led by an explosive running game. Running back Trey Barnett rushed for a school record 242 yards with 2 touchdowns. Barnett is now Georgia State's career rushing leader with 1,631 yards, passing Travis Evans. Here's what he had to say about his recent accomplishments.
It feels great, I got to give credit to God and my O-line and my coaches, but, I just got to keep moving and try to get this Sun Belt championship and take it day by day.
Barnett was named Sun Belt Player of the Week as well. With this amazing performance, Georgia State climbs to number 2 ranked team in the Sun Belt Conference.
Everybody doing that job, off the field, you might do a little extra work in, but we just really doing what we've been doing and just believing each other and just coming together and realize that we got a chance to be something great and everybody pushing each other to get better each and every day.
The Panthers are coming up on a bye week, coming off their 4th straight win.
It feels great, but we can't get complacent. We still got to keep working and recover, most of all, and stay healthy and continue to get better.
The Panthers are looking to use this bye week to prepare for Louisiana Monroe next week, and then the biggest test, number 20 ranked Appalachian State on the 16th. Switching gears to the other football team, the Georgia State's men's soccer team has finally broken into the win column in the Sun Belt standings with a win over Coastal Carolina last weekend. The former Kryptonites of Georgia State fell 1-0 to the Panthers with a late goal by sophomore Tristan Jameau. The men's soccer team also faced the UAB Blazers, in which junior Eris Briggs led the team to a 4-2 victory over the Blazers with a hat trick. This is Briggs' 4th multi-goal game this season. The Panthers have their last home game of the season tomorrow against Central Arkansas. Now, to close out the show, we here at Panther Report News would like to make an apology. An apology to the citizens of Washington, D.C. and fans of Nationals everywhere. You see, we did a poll here and 85% of our staff believed that the Astros would win, including me. But we were proven wrong, and the Nationals silenced the nation on Wednesday with their 6-2 win in Game 7. So again, we're sorry, and congrats to the Nats. On that note, that's all we've got for you here on Primetime. Be sure to follow us on social media at GSUPRN for all the latest updates and analysis. Now, back to you, Keelan.
Hundreds of thousands of Georgia voters won't be able to vote in the upcoming election. On Wednesday, Georgia election officials released a list of over 300,000 people whose voter registration will soon be canceled due to relocation or lack of participation in recent elections. Brad Raffensperger says this process is necessary for a secure location. Election officials would send notices to the voters whose registration is at risk to give them an opportunity to update their information. Georgia election officials says that cancellation is expected to be finished by December.
Atlanta is home to over 200 coffee shops to help get the sleep out of your eyes, specifically the Little Tart Bake Shop. The emerging eatery is growing into a popular spot in the city. Reporter Kennedy Benjamin has more.
Right down the street from Georgia State's football stadium is the newly developing Summerhill community, which will soon have all of your needs. However, a few places have already come to claim their territory.
My name is Amy Gregg, and I am the Director of Operations for Little Tart Bake Shop. Little Tart is owned by Sarah O'Brien, and she started Little Tart about 8 years ago. And originally she was just baking out of her own kitchen and taking pastries to the farmers markets on the weekends. We actually still go to those same farmers markets every Saturday and Sunday. The Summerhill location is our first standalone location where it's all us, no other businesses. We're doing the coffee and the pastry, everything. So this was a really special place for us.
So our most popular drink has to be our cappuccino.
So I went to Emory, and so there's this big distance between an Emory researcher working on a community program and the people they're supposed to be serving. And I was like, you know, when I'm working at Little Tart, I get to interact with people in the community every day. I used to go to parties when I was in college, like right down the road, and it was a completely different area. I was at the protest down the road for getting them to sign a community benefits agreement. Say, hey, like, if we're gonna develop this area, let's make sure that the people that are living in this community have what they need. So I feel like there's a lot of representation happening for women out there that are like CEOs and especially in the business world, and that's like being talked a lot about, but how we actually change the business culture, like teaching people to think about where their food is coming from and then implementing business principles that support that, I think is really exciting and important to the sustainability of like our community as Atlanta, but also the world in a much bigger sense.
Kennedy Benjamin, PRN.
You know the big Coca-Cola sign that sits above the Walgreens on Peachtree Street?
Yeah, I walk past it every day when I go to class.
Well, you'll be missing it for a while. Starting this week, the iconic red sign will be switched and taken down. The sign will be dismantled after lighting up the Five Points district for 16 years, but it's only temporary. The Coca-Cola company says the sign will be replaced and denies companies will be in charge of construction and operations. The replacement will be equipped with plastic LED lights, which will make the glow brighter and more energy efficient. The Coca-Cola Company archivist, Justine Fletcher, says the sign is what the Coca-Cola brand needs and the location of the LED symbol is iconic. The light is expected to shine again by January 2020, returning with a 24-hour glow.
To draw attention to the issue of colorism in the community, the Crown Jewels dance team held a panel to address it. We turn to PRN's Hillary Payne for more.
The Crown Jewels dance team hosted a panel discussion titled Shades of Colorism, where students gather and learn about the effects of colorism that society faces.
I think it's important for people to be aware of colorism so that people can not only acknowledge their privilege, but also utilize their privilege, and to also be aware of some of the kind of ingrained stereotypes.
Students learn the more serious aspects that colorism could have in someone's life.
A lot to do with mental health, which is the field that I'm in, so how it impacts, like I said, identity development, depression, just a lot of the different things that we go through in our day in and day out lives.
Students also engage in discussion and freely express their thoughts and personal stories of why colorism is important to them.
Definitely want to take in the knowledge and know that it's something that doesn't just affect the media. It affects us here at Georgia State. It affects you, especially being a part of a dance team, just having to combat it every day and, kind of figure out how we can stop it. I guess starting the conversation is, acknowledging it and bringing it to the forefront.
Hillary Payne, PRN.
What was your costume this year for Halloween?
Well, I did something more of like a toga thing, back over with the Greek type of touch. What about you?
I did Kim Possible. What's the sitch?
Oh.
Yes. So check out some of the costume students wore to Spotlight's Halloween Town.
They are so creative.
They really are. Well, that's our show.
Make sure you stay connected to Panther Report News throughout the week. And be sure to follow us on all social media platforms at GSU PRN.
Also, subscribe down below and let us know what you think about the show. I'm Maya Grant.
And I'm Keelan Berrien, and we'll see you next week.